Welcome back again in a bit of a late video on the topic, but Project for the Web, or just Project as it's called, has joined the monthly update train from Microsoft. And that means that just like Power BI and other Microsoft tools, it's improving on a monthly basis. So let's have a look at what happened last month, because actually they updated this on January, so I'm not that sad that I'm not posting this on the 2nd of January. Project for the Web got a December update, and there are three things that we can call new features. So we have task attachments, we have an API for importing MPP files, and we'll jump in that in more detail at the end of this session, and we have a quick look column. So let's have a look at all of these new features, and let's start a little bit of a discussion about this. But before we do, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps a lot, and it will get you notified for the next update that Microsoft will release for Microsoft Project, or Project for short. So let's jump into my dummy one project, and this is of course found at project.microsoft.com. Jumping just a bit, this is the project home environment. We have a video on that on the channel as well when it was released, and here you see all your projects. So these are PWA projects, so project online projects. The untitled project is one that we mentioned previously, and this dummy one project I created quite recently. And right from the start, you can see that this is one of the columns that was mentioned in the article, which there will of course be a link in the show notes of. So this is an indicator that tells us if there are notes to the tasks and attachments. So let's start by creating a note, because that's the easiest and fastest thing to do. So going into summary, we click on the little eye icon here, and here we have that add a note. And here, by the way, is the add attachments. That's new, and we'll jump in that in just a moment. So adding a note, here is a note, and we can click on enter, or we can just leave it there. And for quick viewers, we've already seen that this is now present. So we now have a quick visualization if there is a new note coming up. We can also have that on new tasks. So let's create another summary 2, and we can indent promote to a subtask, and then also that newer task can have another note. I'm still looking for a save button, but this is already saved, as you can see within the notes, so that's very powerful. So clicking on that note, now we have these two notes, and that quick view, I can just imagine that this will grow where it will include risks, issues, resource over allocations, things like that are keen to have that in the quick look. And we can, I would say this would very much look like the indicator column in our traditional project. At least that's what I hope. For now, it shows you if there's a note and if there is an attachment. It doesn't show the actual note, and that might be something that we do want to have included in future iterations. So looking at the view note, we get the side pane of the total task summary actually, so we have more information apart from just a note. But here is that little new feature. Now for the other feature that is released, that is very closely aligned to the quick look, is the attachment. So currently, if we look in task 1, I can click on that I dot here, or I can open up this one here, and there is the open details here. I can add attachments, and currently in my environment, I don't know if this is across all environments or if that's just in the EU. I only have the option to add a link to a URL. I can imagine that this will include files from your computer or files from the Teams environment that we create. And remember, as soon as you add resources to this project, it will create a team. It will create an Office 365 group. And that group has a Microsoft Teams environment, and we've discussed this previously, obviously. So looking into the add link to a URL, we have the option to say what the name of the URL is. So let's pick my blog, because why not? TPC blog. And if I click on add now, I will have that short little message with the favicon, and if I click on it, it opens up in a new page, and that's just awesome. So lovely little feature, currently just in attachment, and we can also add multiple attachments. So let's also go into a Dutch news site, for instance. And if I click on that, it will also grab that favicon, and it tells you about the URL and a little bit of description that you gave at the beginning. One thing I like about the icon here, it tells us how many attachments it actually has. And would love to see the icon change compared to the different types of attachments that we will be adding in the future. I can imagine that this quick look will grow exponentially if we start adding all these new features here. So I don't know if the team will do that, but that's something I would say would be a nice added feature here. If, for instance, I would like to add another note, it will add to the left. So the notes will always be on the left and the attachments will always be on the right. Because what we've seen, if we remove the note and we click anywhere other than on the note, you see that there's this little white space here, and that shows that there's nothing here in regards to notes. Now, in previous sessions, in our previous feature release, we've mentioned that it was possible to export to Excel. So how does that quick look get visualized in Excel? Let's have a look. I actually didn't prepare this part, so I hope this goes well. And here you go. So what do we see? We have the task number, we have the outline number, we have the name, assigned to, duration, dependency, start, finish, complete, buckets, dependencies, and it shows the notes, but it doesn't show the URLs. So the attachments aren't available in the Excel extract. I can imagine that's something difficult to do, so I'm not too bothered by this, but it would have been lovely if we had a small indicator that we have a number of attachments to this task. So maybe once again, something to consider in future iterations. And if you want to add to these future iterations yourself, or if you have good ideas, feel free to notify Microsoft by adding a smile or having a suggestion. This is a part where Microsoft is really paying attention. So if you have a suggestion, click on that and let people know what is that suggestion. And then we, as other users, we can follow up by going into the user voice for project. And I'll add a link in the show note as well. So onwards to the last thing that I want to mention here, and that is the API for importing Microsoft project files into Project for the Web. Now, this is a bit more technical, and I want to tell you thank you for watching, and I hope you like and subscribe to this channel if you're not too keen on technical parts. But if you are, stick around, because we're going to have a keen look at what this actually does and what is actually needed for it. So just tell me if you're still here. All right, if you're still here, let's jump into that API and importing that MPP file. There is actually a other blog article on the project team blog. So let's head on over to the main blog website, and here we see that import project desktop files in Project for the Web. If I click on that, you get a bigger description as well as some commands, and we'll jump into this as well ourselves, so no worries too. So I'll add this link and you can read it at your own pace. One thing that you do need to know is that you need to have these files downloaded. And if you click on that link, 3 little files get downloaded to your machine, and these are related to PowerShell. Now, if you're not familiar with PowerShell, PowerShell is Microsoft DOS only on steroids. You can do a lot with it. One of the things that you can do with PowerShell is importing project desktop files. So once you've downloaded the files and you have extracted them, they will be available in a project import folder. And these 3 files are the ones you need. And as you can see, I already have my dummy 1 here, and we're going to import the dummy 2 live during this session. So apart from these files, there is something that you need to note. And because this is code, Windows will protect your machine by blocking the code that's actually in here. So to unblock this code, you need to right-click on the file, go into Properties, and if you just downloaded the file, there will be a section down below which has a bit of text here as well as an unblock option. And if you click on that unblock box option, you'll be able to use that code. You need to do that for all 3 of these values. And as you can see, I've done that already for my part, so we will be able to run that code. Another thing that you need to do is you need to grab your CDS environment. So how do you do that? There is actually some tips and tricks here down below. I typically find the easiest way to do it going into make.powerapps.com. And because we already have a project license or a project environment, we already see some of these apps showing up, such as the app for project. So let's click on that project app, and what we see here is we see this part, and the first section, so the org and then that long number and then the CRM. By the way, that CRM tells you that I'm in Europe, dynamics.com. You need to grab that and use that later on in your codes. You'll use that later on in your code. So let me just grab a note and add that to a note for myself to use later on. I'm just going to remove this because we're not going into Power Apps today. So jumping on to the code itself, we open up as an administrator PowerShell. If you don't have an administrator account, you might run into some security issues. But if you do have that, just run that code, run that PowerShell in an administrator role. That just makes things easier, I guess. So one of the things that we need to know is we need to know if you actually have the correct permissions to run code on your machine, because there is an error message that you will get if you don't have that. So running the Get-ExecutionPolicy list, and if that current user isn't remote signed, then you will not be able to run that code. So make sure to have that. I'll put the exact code that you need to do to get that permission. So let's jump into the actual 2 commands that you will need to perform. So the first one is actually in the link here. So we go into import module, import module, and then we navigate to the project section or the PowerShell section. We copy, paste, nothing more that needs to be done here. If I click on that, we'll see some flashy stuff happening, and then it opens up the command port as well, or the file location where we have the rest of the import. The second one, we actually need some of the information that we already had before. So grabbing this data and opening up that file that we had with our code, we need to have this part of the code, and we will import that here. And then the file path will be your full file path, and you need to be aware that this is actually an incorrect parenthesis. Is that parenthesis? I'm not quite sure. But here is that file location. I'll include that, and then I'm going to say dummy space 2.mpp. I'm going to include or import that file. So let's see how that happens. And I did run into some issues a while back while testing this. Didn't have time to fully do the video back then, so I hope I've done it correctly this time. So let's have a look. The instance ID, I've added that URL, the file path, I've added the file path, and clicking on OK now will actually ask you to sign in, which is very good because we need to sign into that project environment. So let me do this just now. And once we're signed in, it will run the import process. And it's running the script now. And within a few seconds, you'll start seeing the UID, the imported project URL, and the import project is done. So by navigating to this URL, I would be able to see my dummy2 project. There we go. Lovely little imported project. The one thing that I noticed during my import of that first project is that actually when I had that project, I had a dummy1 name in the project file, but I had a totally different name in the project summary. Now keep in mind that Project Importer will take the project summary name. So make sure that you go into that format and you open up that project summary task and make sure that this name on row number 1 and row number 0 is actually the name that you want to give to your project. I made that mistake, and I'm sure that a lot of people will make that same mistake if they don't watch this video. So other than that, a couple of things to take note here, and there's a lot of discussion going on down below the original documentation. There is a large set of limitations within the current import. Here is that unblock, by the way. Nice of them to have that included. There is a lot of limitations currently. So have a look at the list here. I won't go into all of the details, but sub-projects are not included, deadlines are not included, and this might not come as a surprise because most of these items aren't currently present within Project for the Web. So for this, please go in and let us know what you think and give some comments. I think that this is a nice first step from Microsoft to create this file, and as Project for the Web is growing, I tend to think that more items will be included in the actual importer file. Let me know if you agree with me, because there's a lot that can be said about Project and how Microsoft is approaching this. I, for one, like the monthly increments of Project for the Web because it's a cool newish app that is part of a bigger Microsoft picture together with Project Home and Roadmap and Power Apps. And you can find more of my feature release videos on the specific playlist I have for that. So did you like the video? Let me know, and don't forget to subscribe on the channel and click that like button to get more updates. and I'm closing in on 1,000 subscribers. I probably will hit that this week, maybe next week. So I'm super excited to continue my journey together with you. And with that, thanks for watching.